Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Oh well, I'll get rid of it. Welcome to the Multi-Voice Entertainment. I'm the Multi-Voice Reviewer. I have many voices, but one opinion. And today, I remember back then that I decided to get back on my Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, I remember back then I reviewed all three of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Of course, I reviewed this one during my early years, and this one during my sort of years before I moved, and this one when I finally got it. And, of course, I have seen the Christmas special of Guardians of the Galaxy, and also, right now, thanks to my friend who gave me his account to Disney Plus, I was able to watch the animated series of Guardians of the Galaxy. Of course, I haven't watched it all the way through. I wasn't even done yet, so I'm still thinking about getting the Blu-ray of it. And also, I still wish I liked to play those Guardians of the Galaxy video games. And of course, I remember I mentioned that I love Guardians of the Galaxy more than the Avengers. And of course, I also love the DC Comics. That's why I was able to review this DC version of Guardians of the Galaxy, the Omega Men. I mean, I just like talking about Guardians of the Galaxy so much because I love it very much. And I thought to myself, since not many people don't even think about the original Guardians of the Galaxy themselves, I'm going to give you a bit of a history. You know, it started when the Avengers are starting to do their series of Civil War, which I am not interested because I hate stories of superhero against superhero over the goddamn politics. Politics piss me off. And it all started with and then while the Avengers are busy battling against each other for their own Civil War, in the Galaxy universe, we had the story called The Annihilation. And Annihilation involves 4 characters. We had the Nova Corps, led by Richard Rider. And for those of you who don't know who the Nova Corps is, they're like the police officers of the galaxy. They're kind of like the Marvel version of the Green Lantern. And of course, we have my favorite intergalactic cosmic hero, Silver Surfer. And of course, Ronan the Accuser and the Super Skrull. Even though the Skrulls and the Kree were enemy against each other for years, they put aside their differences because they decided to work together along with Silver Surfer and along with Nova, and battling against the Annihilus, the bug-like villain who was creating an army of bug-like army in order to wipe out any life in the galaxy. And the story itself was more of a World War II story, sort of a Saving Private Ryan, per se. And then they did a sort of a post-war kind of story called Annihilation Conquest, where now Annihilus isn't involved, but Ultron making an army of robots and trying to conquer the galaxy. And of course, that's when we ended up with Guardians of the Galaxy, and it involves Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax the Destroyer, and the most iconic duo of them all, Rocket Raccoon and Groot. And of course, they even tried to involve another character called Quasar, also known as Phyla-Vell. They call her Quasar because she has the bracelets owned by Quasar himself. And for those of you who don't know who Phyla-Vell is, unlike the MCU version of Phyla-Vell from the MCU, from Volume 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy, this Phyla-Vell is the daughter of Mar-Vell, who was the original Captain Marvel before Carol Danvers. But since not many people were interested in Quasar, they were more interested in Star-Lord and his team. And sadly, the Nova Corps, Richard Rider, becomes the last member of the Nova Corps because every single Nova Corps member were all destroyed during Annihilation and Annihilation Conquest. And therefore they decided to have a group of Guardians to try to protect the galaxy against threats that are way worse than Ultron and Annihilation. And this is what we have this story, this spin-off story. So, without further ado, let's dig into Guardians of the Galaxy, which I like to call it Guardians of the Galaxy Retrospective, aka Retro for short, and see how this is fair between the MCU movie and this version. So let's dig into the comics, shall we? Oh yeah, one thing is pretty interesting, that sometimes there are these little squares where you see some of the characters trying to do an interview and talk about their mission that they went through. And of course, we have the usual, like I mentioned, but we also have Phyla-Vell, but we also have Adam Warlock. He becomes a member of the team. And this story begins when they're battling against the Church of Truth. And it was led by these two fanatics, Matricious and Cardinal Riker. So we see the Guardians of the Galaxy battling against them, and of course they even did a backstory about people who were relieved during the Annihilation a couple of days ago, after Conquest, where Nova told Star-Lord that he needs to lead a team, a intergalactic team along with Quasar, aka Phyla-Vell. And of course, a little known fact, Gamora did not have a relationship with Star-Lord. Gamora had a relationship with Nova Corps. Richard Rider. Sometimes I kind of wonder, why did the MCU ever focus on Nova? Although rumor has it that they're going to do a Nova Corps movie. But anyway, another backstory, that Star-Lord walks up to Rocket Raccoon and Groot, which the original Groot was dead during the Annihilation, so now Groot is just growing in a pot, kind of like what they did in the first movie. And of course, Star-Lord wanted a little help. Somebody from the outside who would probably help out, and they're pretty much where the comic relief, that Rocket Raccoon and Groot decided to help out. And of course, Drax the Destroyer decided to join with them. And then another backstory. You see, Drax the Destroyer, he had a daughter. And the daughter, her name was Moondragon. But of course, a little known fact, in the comics, Moondragon is gay. And Phyla-Vell was her lover. And Drax did not care about her daughter's sexuality. he was happy for his daughter Moondragon and Phyla-Vell being lovers. But now, since her daughter is gone, now he's trying his best to try to be like a second father to Phyla-Vell. But there are ways he wishes that his daughter was alive. Anyway, while they're battling against that Truth of Truth, there was a couple of worshippers who went to some sort of cauldron, and they were all vaporized. They were zapped out of existence. And then this purple lightning shining in the vat, and this big, grotesque, Lovecraftian-like creature just popped up. Man, I guess in the galaxy they have Lovecraftian creatures. Who'd have thunk it? Well, at the same time, their church, which is a ship, is crashing towards the biggest sun, it looks like. So they had to get themselves out of here. So, they teleported themselves to their base, which is nowhere, a decapitated head of one of the Celestials, which became their base, along with Cosmo the dog. You know, the Russian dog with the telepathic ability and telekinesis. And of course, we also have my personal favorite girl, Mantis, the empath. Except, unlike the MCU version of Mantis the empath, Mantis also sees the future. She just doesn't tell him what's going to happen. Like, they were trying to figure out the name for their team, but Mantis knew what they're going to call themselves, Guardians of the Galaxy. And then all of a sudden they discover that their base nowhere found a frozen piece of rock, where it turns out that frozen piece of rock has like some sort of palace in there. So now the team has to go into that place. So they got themselves all suited up and their guns ready, lock and load. And they teleported themselves all the way to that frozen place. And they were trying to check the place out, and therefore they found Captain America's shield. And when they were about ready to defrost that being in the ice, this creature popped up out of nowhere and starts attacking some of the teams. These millipede giant creatures, that's what I describe them. And they were fighting against them when they trying to thaw out that person who was stuck in the ice. And then that shield just went flying by, and the shield landed to none other than Major Victory, one of the OG members of the OG Guardians of the Galaxy, which I will explain later. But one thing I know about Major Victory, I mean, the difference between this Guardians of the Galaxy and the other Guardians of the Galaxy that Major Victory is a part of, the one that Major Victory was a part of, they're supposed to be the Guardians of the Galaxy from the future in the 30th century. And Major Victory is supposed to be the last human on Earth who joins the Guardians. And his name is Vince Astro. Vince Astro. Cool name. So the Guardians have grabbed Major Victory, and they had to tell them their self out of here before that frozen palace explode. Now they're checking to some of the people in their base nowhere, checking the people while they were scanning Major Victory. Major Victory, he didn't know what the heck just happened. At first, he was sort of in a daze, being frozen, kind of like how Steve Rogers felt after being frozen in the Arctic. Meanwhile, why they went to and then all of a sudden they teleported into the Church of Truth, a planet where the Church of Truth people lived, and some of their followers starts attacking the Guardians, and they go into a big brawl. I mean, they were fighting against one another, that some of the Guardians got home bruised and bandaged. Hey, this is a Disney movie. Nobody gets hurt. They got really bad boo-boos. I like making that reference. Georgia the Jungle. And then all of a sudden, this green acid goo starts coming towards their area. Anybody who touched that green goo gets melted like acid. So they're trying to find a way to keep themselves safe without getting themselves burned alive. Meanwhile, in the Nowhere base, another member of the OG Guardians of the Galaxy showed up, which is none other than Starhawk. And for those of you who don't know about Starhawk, that's the character that Sylvester Stallone played on Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 and 3. You know, Stakar. You know him, the one who says, "According to the rules of the Ravagers, we do not get involved with children." But Starhawk showed up and started fighting Major Victory, and even started fighting Mantis as well, while Mantis was taking care of Groot while he was still growing in the pot. Meanwhile, while they're at their Church of Truth castle, they're trying to avoid the acid. Now, some of the people who are the member of the Church of Truth, who calls themselves the Believers, they get burned, but the rest of them needs to get out of there. And Adam Warlock's trying his best to shield them, but there's no avail. And one of the team one of the Believers grab a dagger and stabbed Adam Warlock in the back. I hope he survived. And then they teleported themselves. Turns out they wanted Adam Warlock's DNA, and then they teleported. Meanwhile, Starhawk and Major Victory is still fighting, and Cosmo is trying to figure out what's going on, but he sees that Major Victory and Starhawk have been fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting. And then all of a sudden, Starhawk disappeared. Anyway, they found this device is supposed to shield them from this gooey acid that's pretty much hovering, that is spreading all over the palace area. They had to turn out the dome shield next to the sun in order to get that stuff out of here. But it's not enough. They need to shield themselves and get to the controller in order for them to teleport themselves back to Nowhere. So Gamora, bravely, stepped in. Now, she didn't get burned by the acid, but she is getting burned by the sun. I mean, she's getting she's burning to a crisp. But she was strong enough to go into the control room and be able to teleport out of here. It was one hell of a mission they ever done. Meanwhile, since the people from the Church of Truth finally got the DNA of Adam Warlock, and believe it or not, they have the birthing pod. So I guess they're trying to clone Adam Warlock and let their clone be in charge of their Church of Truth. And of course, Starhawk showed up again and started fighting Major Victory. Of course, that was in the screen that Star-Lord and the others were watching, wondering what happened when they left. Mantis sensed something. Mantis sensed something was wrong, and it turns out there was sabotage going on. Somebody ignited a bomb in one of their areas, and some of the people got murdered by the bomb. So they had to gather all the bodies to give them a proper memorial. And much to their surprise, they discovered some of those bodies were scrolls. You know those scrolls. They're those green shapeshifter people. Turns out they have scrolls living in their base. And then they start arguing about who they can trust. And two of the alien people who are the member of the Council of Nowhere the council, there's this woman who goes by the name of Sanasar, and also Gorani. They decided to inspect the entire base of Nowhere to see who is a Skrull, who's a traitor. Because they cannot trust anybody. And, you know, it's a shocker to know what goes on here. And even some of the, and then there was some of the aliens in the base who don't trust Major Victory, and they think he's the one who let the Skrulls in. And they're about ready to kill him, but he defended himself. Until, that council lady that I mentioned, Sinasur, she shows up to stop Major Victory, and then Cosmo showed up and tried to put a stop to them with Cosmo's telepathy. Oh, and one thing, the difference: Cosmo is a boy in the comics, but in the movie, Cosmo's a girl. And of course, there's a bit of a distrust between Rocket and Cosmo, because one's a raccoon and the other one's a dog. Gee, aren't there any other feuds between different species around here? And then Starhawk showed up. And of course, Adam Warlock is really pissed off, because he sensed that they took his blood, so they bet that they're gonna try to either clone him or try to turn him back to his evil self named Magnus, which I'm gonna explain later. I think his name was Magnus. While the council themselves is trying to have a meeting to talk about who they can trust and which passengers that they have in here who are secretly a Skrull. Now Drax, he walked into the weapons area. And of course, we see these bodies of these Skrulls, which is supposed to say got something to do with the other Marvel story, Secret Invasion. And Secret Invasion, that was part of the down-to-earth Marvel story that pretty much got something to do with Civil War, because Secret Invasion was a story about a bunch of Skrulls ended up on Earth, and most of them can shapeshift into our favorite superheroes and start invading Earth. Different than the Secret Invasion starring Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. And of course, there's some of the members of the Guardians and the Council is going yeah. Actually, this would be a lot better. But of course, Drax doesn't trust these council people. So he picked up a bunch of weapons in his bag, and the council people try to stop him, but he knocks them out. because nobody mess with the Destroyer. While Star-Lord is trying to get himself a cup of coffee. Now, that's one thing difference between Star-Lord and Star-Lord from the MCU. This Star-Lord, he's more calm, calculated, which he's more like in the comic, and doesn't act like an idiot and listens to music. Which I prefer listening to music and act a little bit like an idiot, but tries to act cool, and he's more subtle and knows how to talk to people. Compared to the animated series where they made him more like a buffoon. Star-Lord's always been my favorite. Because I can relate to him. That's why I have the mask. Now, Adam Warlock has to check the engine room of the Nowhere base, while Mantis decided to meditate. Mantis trying to use her telepathic ability to see if there are Skrulls in their base. And then Mantis starts having this huge psychic thing. It made her pass out, and out comes Stakar, except Stakar's a woman. Starhawk, I mean. Starhawk shows up, and they're wondering if this Starhawk's starting to fight, but as usual, yes. Starts fighting Major Victory. Meanwhile, Cosmos is in his room, and he has suspicious figures in his room until Adam Warlock showed up, and Adam Warlock called Cosmos a bad dog, because Adam Warlock discovered that Cosmos has a couple of Skrulls in his base. So now it becomes a fight between Adam Warlock and Cosmo. But Drax puts on this helmet and flips the switch. And that knocked everybody out, which this one is sent to the end of the series, called Death Invasion, a Secret Invasion story. Probably the end of that story in that run. Everybody is knocked out, and then Drax hit the button again, and he woke up and starts checking the area. Of course, Quasar got mad at him using her cosmic bracelets. But he starts... You see, Drax was trying to find the Skrulls as well, and now they know where they are. And that pretty much blew the cover on what Cosmo's trying to do. So Star-Lord got up and noticed that Rocket was knocked out, and so is Major Victory. Turns out they're still fighting Starhawk. Until Gamora and Mantis grab Starhawk, and Star-Lord punch Starhawk right in the face to knock her out. And out comes Drax and Quasar, and that's when they found the Skrulls. And of course, Adam decided to side with Cosmos because Cosmos was telepathically telling him something. So now Adam Warlock tries to stop Drax for trying to kill those remaining Skrulls, but Quasar put a stop to Adam. But now, Cosmos is trying to see his point of view. Turns out these Skrulls, they were weaponized by Super Skrulls, but these Skrulls, they're not evil. They don't want to invade their base. Turns out that they are a bunch of refugees who wanted to live a normal life like a normal alien person. And of course the council showed up, and being such assholes they are, so now they all start fighting the council. And Star-Lord put a stop to it, along with Gamora and Mantis and Rocket. And of course, that head council bitch was about ready to shoot Cosmos, but one of the Skrulls jumped right in front of Cosmo. And that Skrull died. So now Cosmo's pissed. But surprisingly, this Skrull didn't die. He was just wounded. And now the Lady Council and Star-Lord are arguing. You know, that means... Yeah, blah, blah, blah. But it turns out that Star-Lord, those Skrulls are under his protection. If any of those councils going to step in, they need to go through him. And that means no killing, nothing. That Skrull is staying in the hospital along with his Skrull family until further notice. They have quite a predicament what they're going through here. Well, at the same time, they had to imprison Starhawk, the female Starhawk, to know why. And of course, the next issue, we have a little bit of a backstory of the OG, where the group of other aliens, sort of the origin of the OG Guardians of the Galaxy. Turns out that there was a group of evil aliens called the Badoons. Pretty much wiped everybody throughout extinction in the year 3000. And that's when the OG Guardians of the Galaxy showed up. And that was the bit of the backstory of the OG Guardians of the Galaxy. Which, surprisingly, Yondu is one of the OG Guardians of the Galaxy. Except the difference between the comic book version and the movie. The movie version of Yondu, he's supposed to be like a redneck alien. While the comic version of Yondu, he's supposed to be like a blue-skinned Native American-like alien who has a bow and arrow that he can control the bow with his whistle. So I guess in the movie they left out the bow and just make him control the arrow with the whistle. Use your heart, boy! But of course in this story, this Starhawk, he wiped out some of the Badoon, and 2 of his members were destroyed, sadly. And that's when Cosmos was getting in Starhawk's mind. And then another fight break out. There's another fight going on, and we have Bug as a member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. Now, for those of you who don't know about Bug, Bug was a Marvel character, but believe it or not, he was originally a character of the Micronauts. But I guess when the Marvel Comics lost the ownership of the Micronauts, at least they kept Bug as one of their characters. So he becomes the member of the Guardians. And they're battling a bunch of cybernetic beings, which they're kind of like the Borg in Guardians of the Galaxy. And of course, there's full-grown Groot, along with Major Victory and Rocket. Meanwhile, sorry about the noise, it's the wind. We're having like a bit of a storm going on here. But anyway, doing the Church of Truth in another galaxy, Gamora and Adam Warlock are knocking out some of the other believers to get some information they need from the church. While on another planet in another galaxy, Drax and Quasar they had to find somebody they need to interrogate to get some information they need, and they meet this some sort of soothsayer. And one of these mysterious aliens programmed their cyber monster, and there is this really big, ugly looking monster, like machine monster, to try to kill the Guardians. While at the same time, Star-Lord is in chain. And of course, Star-Lord saw this one big baddie in front of him. He was like, Blastar! Which, that's this guy, Blastar. He must be like a... I mean, I don't know much about Blastar, but he's supposed to be like a barbarian-like villain. Another backstory, that Star-Lord was in the Kree planet, knocking out a couple of Krees, and that's when he bust in and found this... it was an ongoing war where the Kree were killing all the Skrulls and collecting their bodies. And he meets Ronan the Accuser. And it becomes a fight between Star-Lord and Ronan. Until Ronan knocked out Star-Lord and had him in chain and tossed him to their prison, where Blastar is in charge. Meanwhile, Groot, Rocket, Mantis, Bug, and Major Victory are still battling these machine ghouls. I call them machine ghouls. While Blastar is battling against another broody alien. And surprisingly, Blastar was the victor. While Gamora and Adam Warlock is battling against those believers in their church, and Star-Lord sees this huge intergalactic prison that Blastar is showing him. And he told him that they're going to invade Earth. And then we found another member who is the Guardians of the Galaxy, but now in this beginning, he's in the prison, and he goes by the name of Jack Flag, a patriotic character who becomes a member of the Guardians. So, what Star-Lord did, he took off all his clothes and got himself into the prison. And he meets Flag and a couple of other Earth villains that becomes prisoners, like Gorilla Man. They start getting rough on Star-Lord, and they started fighting each other like a huge riot. And then Drax and Quasar, they met Thanos' father, which his name is Mentor, also known as Alaris. And they start getting attacked. Actually, Mentor attacked them for some reason. We don't know what it is. Meanwhile, some of the members are back in their base in Nowhere and still talking to Starhawk. Turns out that Mantis, Bug, Major Victory, Groot, and Rocket, they're all back in their base. And Mantis sensing something again. Mentioning something about Peter. Star-Lord in the prison starts roughing up one of the other villains, and of course, Jack Flag is helping him. And now she's telling some of the members that they need to go to the prison and get Star-Lord and Jack Flag out of there. So, they teleported themselves into the alien prison, while Blast Star is, making a big prison riot. Star-Lord and Jack Flag are fighting their way. Oh yeah, and Jack Flag was in a wheelchair, so I guess they're going to give him some cybernetic legs and make him walk. Star-Lord's trying to get him out of there, while the members of the Guardians are fighting. And all of a sudden, Rocket found Star-Lord's helmet, and he said that there's a bit of brains in that helmet, and thought that Star-Lord was dead, but he wasn't. He's alive. And of course, Mantis sensed that Star-Lord is alive, and she also contacted Cosmos to teleport him where Star-Lord is at. And they finally got to Star-Lord, knocked out some of the prisoners who were about ready to kill them. So now, when Blast Star showed up, they immediately teleported each other back. While Adam Warlock was in the church and he meets that woman again. That, Matricious. And Adam Warlock wants some answers. But instead of demanding something from her, they get teleported. And the woman got really pissed off, but she still has that pod. And when she touched the pod, she started seeing some vision and got passed out. And now she's telling people to open it. Meanwhile, in the prison, Blast Star is trying to interrogate some of those inmates so they know any information about Jack Flag or anything. And believe it or not, turns out that some of the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy went to Earth and they talked to Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four. And it teleported them back to their base. And then there's Jack Flag, now able to walk, while they're trying to get some. And then Major Victory talked to Starhawk, and now Starhawk has tears going. Now this one gets a little shocking, ladies and gentlemen. Quasar and Drax the Destroyer, turns out Mentor teleported them to a desertous place. And Quasar lost her cosmic bracelets. They just fell out of her wrists, and saw a zombie version of her dad going after her and about ready to attack her. In a zombie version of another Captain Marvel, and not Carol Danvers, but another one, and also Annihilus, until Drax showed up and stopped them. And they were trying to find their way out of here. And then they found this guy, Maelstrom. And Quasar and Drax are fighting against Maelstrom until they found until he showed them that he had a pit. In the pit, what lies in the pit is the Dragon of the Moon. And Maelstrom, he grabbed Quasar's cosmic bracelets, and they imprisoned Drax and Quasar and waking up the Dragon of the Moon. Now, Quasar starts having visions of Moondragon, and then he dropped Quasar down, and the Dragon of the Moon ate her. Drax got really pissed off, and then from out of nowhere, the original Quasar himself showed up. And he stopped Maelstrom and freed Drax. And since Maelstrom have these cosmic bracelets, there's nothing he can do. But Drax the Destroyer grabs his blades and cut both of his wrists off, removing the cosmic bracelets, and the original Quasar got the bracelets back. And then out come that Dragon of the Moon, and Quasar created a energy spear and landed right on the dragon. And then an energy blade came out of the dragon's underbelly, and out comes Quasar and Moondragon. They brought Moondragon back. And Moondragon is happy to see her father and Quasar back. The Phyla-Vell Quasar, not the original Quasar. And the original Quasar went off on his own. And now, Phyla-Vell, since she's no longer Quasar, she's Phyla-Vell, and Drax teleported back to Mentor. She did got pissed at Mentor, but he did this in order to bring back somebody that they lost, which was Moondragon. And Moondragon was happy for Mentor doing this, and she was happy to see her father, but more happy to see Phyla-Vell. Meanwhile, Maelstrom is stuck in that place, which turns out that desolate place, it's a living being, and they were on the cape of it. And this, just a bunch of pictures, and this is the end of Volume 1 of Guardians of the Galaxy. So you folks better stay tuned for Volume 2 of Guardians of the Galaxy. So, if you like this review of Guardians of the Galaxy so far, please leave a comment down below, hit like and subscribe. As for me, bum 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 bottom bum 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 bottom bum bottom bum bottom bum 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 bum. Hey, hey, what the matter? Don't feel right. Come and get your love. Bow, bow, bow.